Welcome back to the workshop, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. So today I thought I'd demonstrate to you how to make an S-hook out of a little bit of 6mm round bar. So I don't need a huge amount of tools and equipment in order to make an S-hook, which is one of the reasons why it's such a great warm-up exercise and a brilliant beginner project for you guys at home. All I really need is one pair of tongs, flat bits ideally, a forging hammer, anything will do so long as you're comfortable using it. Of course, a bit of stock, so I've got 7 inches of 6mm round, an anvil, and of course some way of getting it hot. So in my case, I'm going to use the coke forge today. Okay, so I brought the piece out, a nice bright yellow. I want to lift it up slightly off my anvil, and I want to bring my hammer down at a slight angle as well. Just pinching on the very tip of that piece of steel. 1 or 2 hammer blows, no more than 2 on each face, and then rotate it through 90 degrees. And what that's doing is pinching that piece of stock and forcing it down into a square point. There we are. And so I'm left with a nice, sharp, short, square taper on the end of my bar. The next stage of this S-hook is to obviously elongate this taper. So instead of hammering on the point, I want to bring my hammer slightly back, drop my angle of my bar down as well slightly, and hammer behind. And then work my hammer down towards that point. And what I get is a square taper that is roughly 50mm in length. Okay, so what I want to do now is turn it through 45 degrees so the corners are facing upwards. And just knock those corners in. And what I'm after is go from a square point to an octagonal point with 8 equal sides. So there we are, that's roughly octagonal. The next stage then is to rotate that 22 degrees and take those corners off as well. So we go from square to octagon, from octagon to hexadecagon, and then on this sort of size stock, it's pretty much round. Okay, so it's not as warm as last time, and all I'm doing is running up and down that taper, taking those corners off in order to round it up. Nice and easy, nice and simple. And then when it cools down, you can just have a look to see where any of the corners are and take off any remaining hammer marks. There we go. So that's the initial taper down, that's my round point on the end of my bar. The next stage is to form this little scroll on the end of the hook. And to do that, it's like making a fist with your hand, apart from you're going to encourage it round with a hammer. So if I put my hand flat on the anvil and give it a smack with the hammer, I'll break my fingers again. So what I want to do is push my bar out over the far edge of the anvil and gently start that bend off using the hammer. If there's not a gap underneath, you're going to pinch that piece of steel and change the section. So I need that space underneath in order to get it to form that nice scroll. I'm then going to turn my bar up the other way, and I'm going to use my hammer again to curl that little scroll up nice and tight. Okay, so out over the edge of my anvil, gently start that bend off. I can turn it up the other way, and by changing the angle of my left hand, as well as the angle of attack from my hammer, I can scroll that up nice and tight. There we are, and we end up with a nice little scroll on the end of my bar, which is roughly about the size of a garden pea. Okay, so we've forged our taper, we've got a nice scroll on the end. The next stage is actually to form that hook. Now, I could bend my bar around the bick of the anvil, but the problem with doing that is that the bick is a taper, and most anvils, the bick isn't even round, it's usually an oval shape, which is great for some jobs, but not brilliant for others. And now, I want all my hooks to come out exactly the same size, and so what I tend to use instead is a hook mandrel. Now, this drops in the hardy hole, and every time that I go round, I'm going round exactly the same size stock, and therefore all of my hooks come out the same size and shape, which is important. It's also easier for you guys to see, so I'll demonstrate it on that. Before I bend that up, I need to quench off my little scroll so that I don't damage it. So dip that in the water, and then over to my mandrel. So I can come over to my anvil. I've created a gap here. I don't want to be hammering against the mandrel, I need to be hammering off of it, which is why we quenched our little scroll. Because now I can hammer it around the mandrel without actually deforming it. Now, if you haven't got enough stock, all you need to do is create another gap, and I can bring that round. And then we end up with our nice little hook. Now, if you've bent up a little bit too much stock, what you can do is get it back on your mandrel and gently pull it towards yourself and just give it a gentle tap at the back, and that just opens it up a little bit. So you can adjust these quite nicely, nice and easily, and there we end up with our first little hook. Now I'm going to spin that around and we'll turn it into an S-hook. Okay, I'll do this one a little bit faster for you because you've already seen it once. So I've got my bar nice and hot, and I can taper that down nice and fine. I can then extend my taper, looking behind it, and then knock those corners off. And I can knock those corners off as well. Keep your anvil nice and clean. You don't want to be knocking any of that scale into it. And there we are, with our nice little round taper in one heat, which is about how quick you should do them. All right, to scroll this up, this time we've got to do it with the first hook facing downwards, which makes it a little bit more awkward, but not particularly difficult. A little bit more stock. There we are. So there's my second little hook. Second little scroll rather. Lay that flat. There we are. And inevitably your hooks don't end up very flat, just because we're not robots. So what we need to do is just lay our tongs on top and a gentle tap, and that's usually enough to flatten it off. And I can have a look at it to make sure. And I'm pretty happy with that. There we are. That's my nice little hand forged S hook. And you should be able to do those in roughly 3 heats aside. And if you're really going for it, 1 heat aside. But that's just showing off. So there we go, guys, there's a finished S-hook. Now when I'm making these, I typically do them in batches of 20, 30, 50, 100. And that's the best way of getting quick. It's the best way of improving your speed and efficiency and your familiarity with the processes and the tools. So as a beginner smith, it's a brilliant project for you. You know, there aren't too many processes and you don't need a lot of tools in order to do it. So, you know, grab yourself some round stock, grab yourself a hammer and bang out some of these. Now I hope that you found that informative and interesting to watch. Check out some of our other demonstration videos as well. Remember to click like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time here in the workshop. Cheers guys.